I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'd like to have the clerk take roll.
Sure. From the Community Partnership Subcommittee, Chairperson Conway. Ms. Faticani.
Here.
Ms. Martin.
Here.
And from the Finance Subcommittee, Chairperson Leary.
Here.
Mr. Leahy.
Here.
Mr. Artie.
First of all, I want to welcome my colleagues and our honored guest here tonight. This is a joint subcommittee meeting between the Community Partnership Subcommittee and also the Finance Committee. And we're here tonight to meet for the proposal of examining a motion that was recently passed by the Lowell School Committee that would create a partnership that results in an incentive program for school department employees to come forward with creative ideas that result in cost saving for the Lowell Public Schools. Such ideas should not compromise the integrity of any school program, department, or the system as a whole. And before we start, I would like to introduce my colleagues from the partnership and the finance subcommittees. First of all, before I do that, I would like to introduce Mayor Edward Bud Caulfield, and myself being the chairman of the partnership, along with members Regina Faticanti to my left and Connie Martin to my right. And the finance subcommittee, we have the chairman, James Leary, and members John Leahy, and I believe Jackie Doherty is also a member, and she's not here tonight. In addition, I would like to welcome and introduce our honored guest tonight, and it's the school department certainly appreciates your being here tonight. First of all, the Vice Provost for Graduate Education from University of Massachusetts, Lowell, Dr. Donald Pearson. Vice President of Administration and Finance from Middlesex Community College, Dr. Jay Linehan. Chair for the Department of Accounting, UMass Lowell, Dr. Stephen Collins. And Chair of the Department of Management from University of Massachusetts, Dr. Stuart Freeman. And the Executive Director of the Lowell Plan, Mr. James Cook. And I also want to thank the City Solicitor, Christine O'Connor, for being here tonight too, because I'm sure that she is going to help us out answer many of the questions that the program might have. Before I ask for a few brief comments from my colleagues and honored guest, I would like to read the motion because this is televised, and I also want the public to understand what we're trying to do here with this motion. I'd like to read this motion that was adopted by the school committee that resulted in the creation of an initiative to establish a council for creative solutions. The proposal, and again, I apologize, the motion was rather lengthy. As the mayor pointed out to me, it was a chapter in War and Peace, but I think we tried to include as much as we possibly could with this motion. It was to create a council for creative solutions whose members would include, but not be limited to, representatives from the local businesses, healthcare organizations, community services, legal firms, the school department, and our local institutions of higher learning. As you can see here, this is certainly and truly a partnership that we're trying to develop in the city of Lowell. The purpose of the council would be to determine the feasibility of cost-saving ideas submitted to them by school department employees. Anyone employed by the school department, teachers, custodians, cafeteria workers, security, clerks, paras, and administrators who had an idea that would save money and make the school system more effective in delivering services could submit their idea. The council would have the responsibility to review all ideas put before them, ensuring that no idea would be ignored. After thoughtful discussion, the council would select the proposals that reflected cost savings to the schools while maintaining quality educational programming. These proposals would then be forwarded to the school committee for their consideration. At this particular point, I would invite my colleagues from the school committee to say a few brief words as far as this proposal was concerned and anything they would like to introduce at this point. Yes. Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Conway, and I'll be brief. First, I want to thank the state that the motion is an excellent motion. It benefits it has potential benefit not only to the Lowell School Department, but also to our folks who are working for us. There's much work to be done, but I think any worthwhile project is worth the effort. So I applaud Mr. Conway for your motion, and I look forward to being of assistance to ensure that this is a successful enactment for the Lowell Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the school committee? No? Okay. And now I would like to ask my honored guests if they would weigh in and perhaps make an introductory statement in regards to this proposal. Anybody start? Yes, Doctor.
The idea of a suggestion system is one that is very common in industry. It's been going on for years, since in fact the early years of the early years of the 20th century. Just one interesting study that I came across just recently in thinking about tonight's meeting was a study done in 2000 by the Employee Involvement Association, the EIA, that found that the organizations they surveyed had received in their suggestion programs 127,000 suggestions. 48,000 of these were adopted, about 38%. The cost savings to the organizations involved were $739 billion, and employees received $25 million out of that. And that sounds to me like a lot of money. So there's certainly very little downside to implementing a program like this. Employees throughout any organization are those who probably know more about the nuts and bolts of how the organization works than people higher up in the hierarchy of authority, and those voices should be heard. So it sounds to me like a very good idea. I also brought with me, I wasn't sure exactly how we were going to proceed this evening, but I pulled together a bulleted list of 14 items that I call incentive plan process issues that I would be pleased to give out to all of you. I don't know if you want me to go through all of these now, but I have, I think, 14 or 15 copies that I made just in case for your review. Okay.
I think, Doctor, that could be extremely helpful. I think the how we would like to proceed is perhaps, as I said, just an introductory statement by everyone, which again can be extremely helpful. And then what I have done is I've broken it down to perhaps about 7 or 8 topics that I thought it would be a good idea that we could discuss and analyze and perhaps come out with some suggestions. Now, once again, this is just a skeleton of the program, and that's why we have the experts here, because I'm just starting you people off with some of the comments here or some of the suggestions, and I'm sure that is will be going off into a number of different tangents. And again, I truly appreciate you people for being here, because I think that this is not necessarily our forte, by no means, and to seek this partnership, and it's very evident that University of Massachusetts Lowell and Middlesex Community College are always there to help out the Lowell school system, and as well as the business community too. Thank you. Dr. Pearson?
Yes, my personal experience is limited to industry, and when I worked for IBM many years ago in the personnel department, they had an employee incentive plan for cost savings, which was very popular. And as I recall, many suggestions were received, and they would be referred to an expert panel that would determine if it was worthy of adoption. And if it was, there would be, I believe, a small cash reward, $100 or something like that, and then it would be followed. And if in fact the idea proved to result in substantial savings at the end of a designated time period, a year or whatever, why a certain additional percentage of those documented savings would be shared with the employee. I'm not familiar with the practice in education in schools or colleges, and so that's why I brought two experts along with me who could provide further insights.
And that's why we brought the attorney here too, to find out whether it's legal to do it or not, which I think is very important. So this group of people, Doctor, that you were talking about, would this be what we are trying to mirror, perhaps, as the Council of Creative Solutions? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I think it would be comparable. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Collins?
I didn't know ahead of time, obviously, what the background was, but I was and am still curious about what the genesis of this idea was, because I think it's a very workable idea. I think educational institutions probably could stand to be run a little more like businesses in many respects, and therefore the applicability of this kind of an approach to an educational system or individual institution, I think is fine. But I was curious what the background of the proposal was, whether it resulted from somebody who happened to see the idea applied somewhere else, or whether there were specific things in the school system that were noticed that had not been acted upon, or...
Well, I think I can answer that. I'm now retired, Doctor, so I have a little extra time in my hands, perhaps a little too much time. I think that what I was trying to do is come up with an idea that might save the school system some money, and yet, again, not compromise the school system at all. And we took a look at, and I spent 37 years working in the school system, and I obviously have seen I've obviously seen individuals with great ideas that have fallen by the wayside. And I'm talking about teachers, administrators, custodians, and all the other categories that I mentioned earlier that had ideas that somehow they did not have, there was not a clearinghouse for these ideas in how to bring them forward. And I think that the average person out there feels like they're not sure whether they want to bring those ideas forward, because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want somebody to say that that's a terrible idea, or they don't want to face failure. So when I saw that we have I believe over 2,200 employees in the school system, why not tap into this source? And I thought that was extremely important, because that's a source that we certainly could get a lot of ideas out of that can help bring this school system forward, and again, perhaps save some money. And as I was just talking to my colleague a few minutes before the meeting, we had an idea a number of years ago, and it was called Laptops for Lowell, and University in Middlesex and the business community certainly helped out on that, which I thought was a good idea. It happened to be my idea, but it was a good idea. And yet we raised approximately $100,000 to give out computers. And again, it was a form of an incentive program. But yet it wouldn't fall into this category at this point. So I think we're going to have to make some adjustments with the motion, because it did not save any money. And that would be a concern. The chairman of the Finance Committee, Mr. Leary, made a suggestion that we obviously need to include those ideas in our proposal too, and that's why we're sitting down today to try to get as much input as we possibly can. So that's where the idea really came from.
Good. That's good background. I appreciate getting that perspective from where this idea came. The only other thing I wanted to mention was that I think two areas that we need to look at as we go forward would be obviously where money gets spent and how contracts get negotiated, and you know, whether it's fuel or cleaning supplies or office supplies or whatever, and whether money can be saved in just the way that's done, whether it's the quantity purchased or the competitiveness of the bidding or whatever. And a lot of that may already be happening. The second issue involves union involvement, because I assume that many, if not all, of your employees are unionized, and sometimes when you try to suggest a change to a process, the way something gets done as opposed to the way something gets bought, you've got union issues that have to be at least addressed, because sometimes job descriptions and other kinds of things are affected by what you might want to do. This doesn't change the possibility of somebody suggesting something, but it might mean a problem in terms of executing the suggestion.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. I think my initial conversations with some of the union people, they thought it would be a positive situation. But once again, I'm sure that we will certainly probably run into some problems. Dr. Linehan, please, from Middlesex.
Thank you. I think this is an exciting idea. I think in any large organization, it's very easy for the employees to get disenfranchised, to feel that they're not part of the process, to feel that, you know, they just come to work and they leave and that's about as far as it goes. They're not engaged. Clearly, the Lowell school system is a large organization, no question about that. And if nothing else, if the employees take part in this process and they have a sense that their voice is being heard and being engaged, that in and of itself is worthy enough to proceed with this particular project, to increase morale. And there's a variety of sub-issues that would be beneficial with that as well. Just across the board with people, because again, I think people do feel like their voice isn't heard. Management doesn't have the time to listen to me. Decisions are being made downtown in an office and they don't understand the day-to-day things that occur here. And if this helps break some of that down in and of itself, I think you're going to have a benefit. In addition to that, I think you're right. I think you will find savings. I think the people that do things day to day are the people that understand some of the nuances. And, gee, what if you did this? What if you did that? As I understand it, the operation of the schools is kind of broken into two parts. Is that it's administered, obviously, by the school department, but the whole physical assets, the plant is administered by the city. Is that correct? So that must further complicate trying to get some symmetry as to how do we deal with ideas. Because particularly, you know, I think the ed reform was trying to take organization and management to the level that it should be at. And that occurs in the administration, but you clearly lose that on the plant side. And I don't know how much savings there ought to be had on the plant side, but we sure as heck know that we're spending an awful lot of money on the plant side, especially with fuel being the way that it is these days. And it's not going to go down anytime soon. So you've got, I think, a couple of different issues that will be well served by this particular motion, by bringing people around a table to look at some of these items that are they're gonna come up. And I think what you're gonna find as you start to sort out all these ideas and you put this committee together, that there's some significant commonalities that are gonna occur throughout the city. You're gonna find, whatever they may well be, but there will be threads that are there. How you're gonna deal with that in rewarding the people who came forward with those ideas, I think is gonna be a challenge. But clearly, I think you're going to get a consensus of things that people think are different ways to look at things, and they're not going to be unique to one school on one side of the city versus a school on the other, or whether it's K-12 or the high school for that matter. So I think this is a great idea. I'm glad to be here and speak in support of this particular idea. So, good luck.
Thank you, Doctor. Before I continue with Mr. Cook, I would like to just point out that we have the Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction, Ms. Jean Franco here, Assistant Superintendent of Personnel, Sue Mulligan, and Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Jay Lang, and we also have a correspondent from Lowell Sun, Ms. Jennifer Myers. Mr. Cook?
have $1 million budget somewhere, and somebody comes up with a solution that saves that particular school $50,000. Where does that $50,000 go? How is that savings realized? Is the money back and redistributed within that school, but to do other things? Is it, in other words, how does that savings take shape? How is the money actually saved? Does it go back to the city budget? Does it go back to the central administration? So I guess short of questions like that, which I think working out the logistics of would be an exercise we'd be willing to work with you on and help you. I think it's a great idea, and as was said earlier by Mr. Linehan, anytime you can encourage an employee to come forward with an idea that can save their company, their school, their business, what have you, money, and welcome that as not criticism of the way things are done, but instead something that's very constructive in helping change the way things are done. If you can create that atmosphere in the schools and throughout the system, I think you've already accomplished something very major. But logistically, I'm really intrigued to see how you can work that out and how employees, in fact, can get maybe extra compensation if that's the case, or how you would come up with some reward system for them. And then, as I said, if there's a bottom line savings, where does that go? How is that savings manifested in the budget?
Thank you, Mr. Cook, and I think these are some of the questions that we obviously have to deal with, again, it's complicated. There's no doubt about that. It's very, very complicated. I wonder if Christine O'Connor would weigh in on this too. City Solicitor.
Sure. As you pointed out at the outset, there are certain legal issues that will have to be dealt with as this program gets ironed out, and the details of how it's going to run become more apparent. Certainly, at the outset, there are some obvious issues that have already been alluded to, one of which would be union issues, whether some of these potential cost-saving measures would have to be bargained to a union group. There are also issues under ed reform, and even on the city side, if this were to be implemented with respect to ed reform and Plan E and the authorities of both the superintendent and the city manager, and how recommendations of say, an outside body to the school committee or to a city council would then end up being implemented by an administrator, and concerns that might raise. Again, they're all issues that I'm sure can be ironed out, but they're issues that we need to be sensitive to and to figure out a way of being able to do that. There are also some practical issues with respect to coming up with a mechanism of allowing an employee to obtain a second paycheck, if you will, from a municipality, which as a general rule is prohibited unless they are, an exempted employee. If, for example, however, this was set up with an outside committee and maybe private funds donated to help save public dollars, that's something that might completely avoid that type of a problem. As everyone has indicated, it's a really interesting suggestion, and it's one that the city manager is already starting to look at as well. And if it's the wish of the subcommittee, maybe a good first step would be to have the law department just outline and prepare an opinion as to some of the legal issues that are out there and some of the potential solutions to address those.
Then I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that the first item of business that both subcommittees undertake is to send the motion to the law department for a report back to the subcommittee as to whether or not there are any legal impediments as we proceed.
Motion to request an opinion from the law department regarding any legal impediments and potential solutions to any that may arise, by Ms. Faticani, second by Ms. Martin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Continue.
And I would like to again recognize the mayor, Edward Bud Caulfield, if he would like to say a few words, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you and the subcommittee for being here this evening, but more importantly, I want to thank Dr. Donald Pearson from UMass Lowell, Dr. Jay Linehan from Middlesex Community College, Dr. Stephen Collins from UMass Lowell, and Dr. Stuart Friedman from UMass Lowell, and also our good friend from the Lowell Plan, Jimmy Cook. Also, Jay Lang, Gene Franco, Susan Mulligan, for being here as well. And Chris O'Connor, Jim Leary, and John Leahy. I think it was very prudent and very wise to ask the law department to investigate ways and means how you can implement this program. I worked for Raytheon Company for 44 years, and they probably still have, a suggestion program. And they awarded people through their suggestions, whether it saved thousands of dollars or could save $500,000. They awarded them per the suggestion. Some received dinner for two, some received a financial award. But Raytheon Company and many other companies are doing that to save money. But that's the private sector. This is the public sector, and I know the solicitor will look into making sure that if we do this program, it will be done in a legal way. Saying that, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And there's 2,100 employees in the Lowell School Department. Everyone probably has an idea how we could save money or how we could improve the school system. There's also 15,000 students. 700 students graduated from Lowell High School this year. And I want to recognize Bill Samaras, who does an outstanding job at Lowell High School. Many of those students are going to Middlesex Community College, UMass Lowell, MIT, Harvard, Boston College, BU, etc. Many of those students are probably leaving high school and say, you know what, I had a great idea, but no one listened. This is a way of probably bringing it to the table. And, excuse me, not every idea is a good idea, but at least this is opening the door and the window for those ideas to be looked at, to be thoroughly examined. And I was at a company today on Industrial Avenue. They specialize in solar panels. There's a company in Lowell that can help us with our cost, our energy costs and so forth. And someone had to come up with that idea somewhere along the line to come up with solar panels to reduce costs for energy. So I want to compliment Dave Conway and the subcommittee, but most importantly, everyone that's here tonight. You're giving up your Monday evening, and I know the Red Sox are on. It could be rain delayed, but you're here. We appreciate that, and I think this is a move in the right direction, and I know Chris O'Connor will thoroughly investigate ways and means to see if we do this, it's done in a legal way, make sure the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and if this plan works for the school department, you can rest assured that we'll probably look at doing the same thing on the city side too. Thank you.
Before I continue, I'd just like to ask the city solicitor a question. Do you know of any municipality or school system that has a program like this?
I don't, and again, this is something that I know the manager was looking at as well today, and I don't believe that he came across one that actually has implemented something like this, but it's something that the law department will continue to look at, and the manager's office will be looking at as well.
Okay, thank you. I put down a few topics that I thought we could discuss, and I'm going to read them very quickly to you, and then maybe perhaps it might be a good idea to take one at a time and analyze it and find out how we can make that particular issue work. The first one, clarification of employees that will be eligible to participate in the incentive program, selection of the members of the Council for Creative Solutions, financing of the program, application and selection process, marketing and publicity, establishment of a time frame for the program, creative ideas that benefit the school district but do not result in cost savings, and obviously other agenda items. Again, this is just a few items to get us started. If we could take the first one, and then I'll open it up to the floor. Clarification of employees that will be eligible to participate in the incentive program.
I would actually be looking to Dr. Collins and Dr. Friedman to give me some feedback. Both of you study management systems, and both of you, and Dr. Pearson was at a company that actually did this. When we're looking at putting a group of people together, who gets to participate? Everybody, including students? Is there anybody left out? Because that can cause a problem.
It seems to me, as I mentioned before, it is often the case in any organization that those who know the most about what works and what doesn't work are those who are doing the actual work.
Right.
So my suggestion would be to include as potential respondents in this project any employee in the system who would like to participate.
Okay.
There'd be no reason to limit that as far as I could see. The only consideration here, I think, or one of the considerations here in doing something like that, is to recognize that there, of course, is a broad range of, the demographics, as you look across the whole system, are very different in terms of language skill, in terms of educational background, and so on. So what that means is that the way in which the information about the program is communicated to people has to be communicated in a way that that everybody can understand. Okay, and that will take a little time to do, but it's certainly not an impossible task. By generating drafts of language, of a document that will be communicated to people about what the program is about and how it will proceed, and circulating that among people throughout the system to get some input on that before it's formally released would be to way to do that. It's sort of a previewing procedure.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Mann.
Again, looking to kind of individuals who have some expertise in industry, I think is particularly helpful here. One of the questions I would have in terms of inclusion of staff in this endeavor would be, how do we look at individuals whose job descriptions very clearly state that finding cost-saving measures are part of their job? I can look at people in this room. I can look at, the one that immediately came into my mind was John Dakota, who is our transportation director, who found an inordinate amount of savings by doing his job exceptionally well. My concern is that's his job, and that's what he gets paid for. And I don't know if this is a different path that people then participate in, that they put their ideas into the mix and they travel this way, or do they follow a traditional path where they're, it's part of their everyday budgeting, part of their everyday administration of their job responsibilities, and then it travels through a specific chain of command. Is there a level at which this kind of a incentive program isn't necessarily appropriate? And I don't know if at Raytheon or at IB or any of these other, I mean, did the CEO get, a check?
That's a good point, Connie. At Raytheon, department heads, supervisors, foremen, they were expected to find ways and means of saving money. It's the employee who puts in an idea or suggestion, and not everyone who put in that suggestion or an idea is going to walk away with a lot of money. It might be just a little fountain pen. But the purpose of it is that out of the 100 suggestions, there might be that one suggestion that could save the company $500,000. But getting back to John Dakota and so forth, that's his job to save money. But if someone brought in a suggestion for him to look into saving money, then that would implement this suggestion program.
Actually, I just want to add here, I like the mayor, with the mayor's point a little earlier about students. I find, I do this occasionally in my classes at UMass Lowell. I ask students to identify what's good about the program and what's not so good about the program. And there are times when they tell me things that I didn't have a clue about. That is really a kind of where the rubber meets the road kind of level. These are the students who are the recipients of the services of the school system. And they know what they live with every day and what works and what doesn't work. So I think it'd be a good idea to consider including students in this program. It might not be contained within the same incentive system, but I think students would be pleased and proud to have the opportunity to tell people who run the system what they think. I think you'd find some fascinating things there.
Yes, go ahead.
Just so as we move forward, then, would we want to be looking at, and I guess it's something that the committee itself can determine over time, but will it be determined by union membership? I mean, will Unit B not be eligible, or is it just individually contracted employees who wouldn't be eligible? Those are the two distinctions that I'm thinking of right now, that there might be others.
Mr. Leary?
No, and I think that's a great question Ms. Martin puts out. And I think a lot of that, if you ask that of the city solicitor to get really more of a legal opinion, a lot of what we're discussing, we're really waiting for that information. And as Mr. Caulfield articulated, a company I came from before I started my own company, it was usually the rank and file, quote unquote, whatever that really was. And that really went up to, in that organization, it was up to a supervisor level. But that organization had managers, directors, vice presidents, et cetera, so it was a comprehensive type organization. So once you have a legal outline as to what you can do and how you can do it, you really can be as creative as you want to be. But I think that the intent would be for the general, the Unit A folks and the exempt folks and some of our, SEIU folks to be really the ones that would benefit from that program. And, not that John Dakota's of, the middle management folks shouldn't get it. They would have other incentives in other areas, I think. And that's just kind of my thought process on it.
Yes.
I think what we probably need to do on item A is, I don't think we're ready to make a decision tonight. I think we need to get information from the city solicitor, and then the two subcommittees need to meet again. And I think we need to formalize what item A is going to look, what it's going to look like.
Well, I think that we're probably not going to be ready to finalize anything out of these points of discussion. I think the whole idea is to gather as much information as we possibly can, so we can bring this information back from the experts and from our colleagues, and we bring them back to a subcommittee meeting, and we digest what we have heard. And I think at that particular point, we make decisions. And again, it might not be the first meeting or the second meeting or the 10th meeting. I really don't know. But what is going through my mind is I kind of hesitate to exclude anyone from the program either, because I look back at the Laptops for Lowell program. I was in Unit B. And that idea perhaps wouldn't have been, maybe it wouldn't have been brought forward. I'm not sure. But the fact is, I'd hate to have, in my mind, I would like to see all levels, and I could be wrong on this, just my opinion, I'd like to see all levels working together as a unit so that we could come up with creative ideas. So I kind of hesitate to exclude any individuals. I think the idea of the students, Doctor, is something that I really, to be quite frank with you, it never entered my mind. But the more I'm thinking about it, I think that certainly warrants some more discussion. That's kind of fascinating, because we no longer have just 2,000 or 2,100 individuals working together, but now we perhaps have an additional 15,000 that might be able to, they might see things that that might be right in front of our nose and we don't see it. So I think that certainly warrants more discussion.
And they have as vested an interest in school system success as the employees of the system.
Absolutely.
Their futures are at stake.
Absolutely. I thank you for that. I thank you for that suggestion. Any other ideas about who might be excluded or who might be added in? Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you have to exclude elected officials, because you wouldn't want elected officials filing motions week after week. Let the employees, let the students get involved, and that's, it has to be that way.
All right, I'll make the motion to exclude elected officials. And you're right. It clearly, we should be excluded.
Right. Yeah. All in favor of?
Aye.
Aye. I think that was perhaps one of the easiest votes we've ever had. Any other discussion? Yes, Dr. Collins.
I concur that the involvement of students, I think, would be an exciting possibility, because the people closest to the action are often the ones that notice things. But it does, complicate the volume enormously, and I don't know at the beginning whether that you should go, jump in with both feet, so to speak, and include that bigger group, and parents, for that matter, who may notice things or be involved with the school system as well in various ways. But it would be nice to involve them in some way, but I'm not sure at the very beginning it's a wise thing to do, just because of the sheer volume involved. Maybe there's some way to get student suggestions fed up through the student's principal or something like that, and feed them to the committee that way rather than opening it up entirely. But I do think that some of the good ideas could very likely come from students.
Well, given the number of students in the system, it probably makes more sense not to do a census of students, but rather do a sample of students. Properly selected, we can select a body of students that would, in fact, with a high degree of probability, represent the population as a whole.
Dr. Linehan?
Just thinking about the students, and I agree, I think the task might be overwhelming, but something you might want to give some thought to is the parent-teacher associations with regard to the students. Clearly, they're the parents of the students. And if you included them somehow in this process, and if they could be the entity that brought forward some of the student ideas, that may well be an organized way to get some solid ideas. And of course, they occur throughout the entire city. And I don't know whether you roll it up to the citywide parent association, or whether you leave it at the grassroots level. But that may be worth some consideration.
John?
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. You need to get, and it could have a, what's that? Didn't mean to steal. No, but it would have a benefit twofold too, because you get more people involved. Generally, at the PTOs or PTAs, you always have the same group of 10 people, which is unfortunate. But maybe if you introduce this incentive program, maybe you get more people at these meetings, because, I have 3 kids, and I get suggestions every day, and Mr. Lang's heard most of them this year. So the kids, they'll come home every day with a suggestion, and you bring it up to your PTA or your PTO, and so that's one way. It's a good way that these suggestions come up.
Good point. Good point, John.
If we're going to talk to the people in the various schools, and without getting bogged down in semantics, is there also a way to ask them to not just come up with something that's cost savings? Because again, I'm not sure I understand how that gets translated in the public sector, but to take a look at something that may be cost effective. Is there a better way to do it to get more value for the dollar you're spending? And that's something that's done all the time in the private sector as well, where people may have a marketing budget of $100,000. Should they spend that on an employee? Should they hire a company? How much can advertising do they get for that? And how can they stretch that dollar to get maximum value? And those are ideas that are often sought as well. So I'm just wondering if within a school system, it may not be something that results in savings, but somebody may have an idea that's a better way to use the money you've got. And maybe that can be a second part of this, because I think that also is something that brings value.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Any other comments on this, on the first issue? Yes.
Just want to, one point that Mr. Cook keeps bringing up too, you know, you may not see the savings in the public sector, but what you do is you see the reduction in next year's budget too. So that'd be one way to look at it. So you're not always, you know, when you say you're saving money, you won't see that in actual dollars the next year, but you'll see it in reduced, I wrote it down somewhere, but you won't be asking for that much more money next year.
Okay, thank you. The second point, selection of the members of the Council for Creative Solutions. Does anyone have an idea on how they might be picked? And I know that I've talked to Dr. Linehan about this briefly, and I think that he actually had perhaps a suggestion that there might be I believe like a subcommittee out of that group too that would do an initial screening so that you wouldn't be sitting there going through hundreds of suggestions. Dr. Linehan?
Sure. Well, I think the structure that you put in place is going to be key. I mean, as you talk about rolling this out through the entire city, I can only imagine the variety of different requests from all corners of the city you're going to get. And you need to have some substructures in there. You need to have some filters involved. I mean, I think you can talk about savings, you can talk about efficiencies. Some of it's going to be second-guessing management all the time. That's going to happen. That's going to be part of the process. It is what it is, and people have to understand going into that. But you need to start with the view that there are going to be some great ideas. You need to but you do need to filter them along the way. I don't know what the process is for that, but if you had 8 people to grab a number that were responsible for reviewing all these, you would overwhelm that committee, and they wouldn't be able to get the job done. And there needs to be somewhere within the school system people that have some type of a sense as to what the operations are, and you somehow need to develop a matrix that you're going to have to deal with, which might be transportation, might be curriculum, might be plant, might be supplies, whatever. And there are going to be people who understand that. And, you know, I wouldn't have a clue with regard to some of the day-to-day stuff that would occur in that regard. As you would sort that and filter that up, I think then you could bring in certain other expertise that may be able to have an assessment on that. But I think part of what you need to be able to do is have some independence as you go through this. I mean, to the extent that you put together, and that's a very tricky, I would think, because the people that are going to have a sense as to whether or not this is a good idea or not so good idea are going to be some of the people who do the management. And sometimes management is very open to good ideas, and sometimes management isn't interested in anybody's idea at all. I mean, I think it goes back to the question that was asked earlier by Connie Martin, which was, you know, is it part of their job? Yes or no? Well, the people who feel that it's part of their job and want it to be part of their job are going to be very excited about these ideas. The people who don't quite endorse it as much aren't going to be so quite excited about these ideas because they're going to think they're being second-guessed all the time. That will likewise be part of this process. So the devil's always in the detail. And how you could structure this matrix in whether or not you can divide it into different segments of the city. I mean, the high school's clearly one section. Do you do it by, you know, the entire high school, or you do it by the houses? You know, now you go through, you know, you get through K through 8. I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, schools are set up in different ways. Do you limit it to the school, and do you have little subcommittees for the schools? I don't know the answer to that question. I think there's a lot more discussion that needs to occur there. But ultimately, you're going to have a big matrix, and you're going to have to put things in different places. And then people who have expertise in some of these areas are going to have to weigh in whether or not they think it's a good idea or not. I think the second part of all of that becomes, you know, when you filter those ideas through, and clearly you're going to have impact bargaining issues and all of those types of things that you're going to have to deal with, is how do you reward these people for good ideas? And I think you're going to, again, as I noted earlier, I think you're going to get, you know, a whole score of people or more that have a similar idea that results in the cost savings in one particular entity. I'm not quite sure how you address that on the reward side, but again, I think as you start to go down this road, you're going to find there's a whole host of questions to be answered and, issues to be resolved. That doesn't mean you don't take the step down that path, though. I think this is an exciting idea, and part of it needs to be grassroots, but part of it can't be all the way through. So there's a dynamic that goes on. I mean, the gentlemen here from the university know more about the day-to-day stuff of this than I do. But, the larger the institution, the more difficult it is to sort it out and to put it in a way that it works, which has already been mentioned a number of times, in a public institution makes it that much more difficult. So, yeah, a lot of thinking is going to need to go into this. But, again, I think it's a great idea. And to get people engaged, just that they are going to be part of the process, in and of itself, I think is going to be a worthy step.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. It is complicated, and one of the problems that we run into is that, and that's why I asked the city solicitor whether there was a program in place in a municipality or a school system so that we could obviously go to. And it makes the job much more difficult if we don't have a template to work from. And again, I think and I hate to keep on going back to it, but the Laptops for Lowell program, we did not have a template. It didn't exist in the country, and we were in the dark on going through that. And it took, matter of fact, Dr. Pearson was on that committee, and it took quite a few meetings before we kind of hammered it out and made some sense out of it. And even at that, we could always end up tweaking it each and every year. So I agree with you, Dr. Linehan, that there's going to be some complications in here, and you bring up the possibility of, do we have 3 levels of these ideas? Is it K through 4 and 5 through 8, 9 through 12? Are they separate? I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. Yes?
And I want to expand on what Dr. Linehan was saying. I think you want to simplify where possible. And obviously, we're sitting here with a boilerplate for a public institution that has never been drawn up before. So the first part, again, is going back to the city solicitor and seeing legally what you can do and you can't do. The second, and I hate to use Raytheon, but it's probably the most known example here by Mr. Caulfield with 44 years of experience there. They're much bigger than we are. We could probably use that as kind of a boilerplate to begin what we're going to be doing. And then making changes where we need to, not both legally and how our organization specifically is designed. So I think that might be, when I say simplify, it's going to be much more challenging than simplify. But you're taking something that's already in existence, modifying it legally to what we can do and can't do, and then making changes the way our organization is simply aligned. And I think that might save you a lot of time. And again, like Dr. Linehan was saying, the devil's in the details. You're going to have folks that are going to be second guessed, and they're going to be feeling a hardship because of that. And that's something that Raytheon and other organizations have dealt with. There's mechanisms in place that will try to eliminate that at a lower level as opposed to a higher level, such as the school committee or the overall council that you'll ultimately develop. Thank you.
Thank you. I was thinking what might be a good idea is if the university and Middlesex could help us out with something, that perhaps some research could be done to find out what companies are doing this in the vicinity, and what, in having a successful program, and perhaps they can come forward, and maybe we can kind of go to school on their program that they might have had in existence for a number of years. As the mayor has said, Raytheon is one company, and I do believe, Mr. Mayor, that Raytheon still does have that incentive program. I know that Mr. Hayden and myself, we talked about it this morning, matter of fact, that it was a very successful program. I talked to Ms. Doherty before she left the country, and she talked about the fact that when that program, an individual got a bonus of a number of thousands of dollars, and so much so that he went out to buy a car, and for publicity purposes, they took a picture of the family in that car in a field, everyone waving, and needless to say, she said that really pushed a lot of new ideas forward. When the employees they actually saw this initiative materialize into something that they would like to have also. So we should perhaps take a look at Raytheon, and again, if the business department at the university, if at all possible, could do some research, give us a hand with that, and we could perhaps invite some of those companies and ask them what they did, how did they start it, what went right and what went wrong. Even though, again, it's going to be different because we're going to have perhaps legal problems that they might not have had. Any other comments? Yes.
One precedent that you might keep in mind was a number of years ago, we had a small grants for teachers program, which was funded by the Lowell plan. It was an annual event, I believe, and it sort of followed council's suggestion that you might want to consider administering the program outside the school department. And in this case, teachers were invited to submit creative ideas, and I believe there were grants of up to $500, and members of the Lowell plan, the executive board, made the decisions on what they thought as non-educators, but just, to grant to teachers, and so it was private funds. I think, this idea, could go either way if it proves to be too complicated to have the school department administer it directly. That might be another approach.
Well, that's why I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to put as many ideas on the table, and it's very difficult. I'm obviously trying to keep this meeting as brief as we possibly can, because we could go on for days and weeks with the material. Again, the time that we have, I really do appreciate you people coming forward, because we will take these ideas and we will bring them back to the subcommittee. And I would imagine our next subcommittee meeting on partnerships will be rather confusing, because there will be so much information that we're going to try to digest. And again, I think it's important that we do not rush this. If we rush it, it's definitely going to fail. And it hasn't been in existence in the school department since the beginning, so we certainly can take our time with this. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everything will rely on the report from the solicitor, and I know the solicitor, Christine O'Connor, will do a thorough job investigating whether this has any legal legs or not, and I know she'll come back with a good report. Once that report comes back, then I think you can move forward or put the brakes on. But as far as a panel looking at the suggestions and stuff, they have to be impartial, and whether the principals from each school send those suggestions into that panel. And once again, at Raytheon, many people got involved in the suggestion program, and they walked away with a fountain pen. It's not like, big bucks. It's that 1 out of 100 that might save the company a lot of money, and they were rewarded for that suggestion. So I want to compliment the subcommittee and you, Dave, for bringing this forward. And once again, nothing ventured, nothing gained. If we can save money, then we should look at it. Well,
I think that we certainly do need, we need a council, I think, that's going to have a cross-section of the community. And I think that's extremely important, because someone said, well, why not just give it to the principal or give it to the superintendent and so forth? And I think the idea needs to go to a clearinghouse, should we say, of this a council on creative solutions, so that we have people from the business community, from lawyers, accountants, and people from the medical field and nonprofit. All these people, again, working together. Again, for time's sake here, I'm going to move on rather quickly here, if I can. The financing, and again, decisions aren't going to be made tonight, and I appreciate the ideas. That's what we're really looking at. Financing of the program. Any suggestions on how to finance? Yes.
Just real quickly, I think obviously we got to wait for the city solicitors who we can do and can't do. Jimmy pointed out something earlier today regarding how do you measure cost savings, and Mr. Leahy pointed out correctly that if you achieve a savings, you don't have that much money in your line item the following year. If you achieve an immediate savings, that's something that we as a school committee can spend in another area during that year, buying textbooks, computer technology, what have you. So, I mean, I think the finance committee and the school committee as a whole, once we get, what direction we're allowed to legally to go into, we can be pretty creative in areas. And if you can measure a success in savings, you can share some of that success, especially if it's a large, amount of money. And as the mayor articulated, most of these ideas, it's going to be one, maybe one out of every 10,000 that's going to save a significant sum of money, but that's something you want to encourage. I forgot who said it earlier, but someone was pointing out that sometimes, I think Dr. Pearson said it, you have an initial gratuity, be it financial or reward, for having the idea sent in and reviewed. I'm not sure what that would mean for us financially, but once if that idea actually would gathered acceptance, then you would have a more of a, lack of a better word, a meatier type of a reward. But it's something, again, the finance committee and the school committee as a whole can be very creative with, and I think we would be once we know which avenue we're legally allowed to go forward with. Thanks.
Right, and I realize, thank you, I realize that it's all going to hinge on the legalities of it, but I think that what we want to also do is we want to be prepared, and we want to get something on the table that we can be working with. And I think that when we have some type of savings, if this savings is something that's fairly straightforward, let's assume for argument's sake it comes from the custodial section and they figure out better chemicals to buy or a piece of equipment that's going to save them some money and save us some money, and it's pretty clear that it's going to be a $10,000 savings. At that particular point, where does that money, where does the bonus come from? And maybe I can ask Jay Lang if he could weigh in on this and what his suggestions would be if it was a clear-cut savings.
I think I would suggest, living within the current confines of the budget, you'd have really just two options before you if you kept it within the local appropriation. One is you could appropriate funds for whatever the reward incentive program is. So you might have an actual line item in your budget that's appropriated ultimately by the city council for, let's say, $5,000, something like that. And out of that line item, you would pay, again, if it's after review, you would pay your stipends. A second way to do it, because there is no line item in the budget now, or at least for the next year, would be if you did have an item like that and you knew it was going to be in the '09 budget, a clear-cut $10,000 savings, you could reallocate and reappropriate from that line item a piece of the $10,000 to be paid as the incentive. Those are the only two ways that I, without really exploring this further, would be able to find a pool. It would have to be appropriated funds. But if we don't have anything appropriated in the budget, the only way around that would be to actually take the line item that you'd have the savings in and appropriate out of that line item.
Thank you. Any more comments on the financing of the program, Mr. Cook?
I'm going to assume that we're very interested in financially participating as well, particularly if there's some kind of, if the school side is willing to do something, we could come up with something that could be a match. We can also work with various businesses, whether if it gets to a level of gift certificates, we could get restaurants to contribute and participate that way as well. And on the financial bonus or incentive or however you structure it, all this subject to legal interpretation, that's something we'd be willing to participate in as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman? Over here?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think as you proceed on this, I think there's two sides of this. There's two sides of this issue. One is the compensation to the people with the ideas. I think you need to be really careful on the budget side of it. Clearly, everybody wants savings and people want to do things more efficiently. Your example of, a clear-cut $10,000, it doesn't typically happen that way, and you'll find that it won't. And you need to be careful that if the folks at these particular places feel that we're going to have a great idea and they're just going to slash my budget as a result, you're not going to get a lot of participation. And this won't happen. And there needs to be a thinking of at least a shared savings of some sort. Because if they come up and they save $100,000 and go in, boom, and it's gone from their budget, and I think it's safe to say that everyone would agree that there's not enough money in the budget to begin with. and that everybody needs more than what they currently have, and that's not limited to the Lowell School Department, it's everywhere. And if all of a sudden you come up with a great idea and boom, that money's gone, it goes back to the old phrase, no good deed goes unpunished. And that's exactly the way they're gonna feel about it. So I think you need to be extremely careful as you go down that road so that, you know, and again, the calculation of that. I calculated at 50,000. Well, I calculated 100,000. Well, we're gonna take $100,000 out of the budget. And now the principal or the people at that particular school feel, you know, quite frankly betrayed, and that they thought they did a great deed, and next thing they know, they've got less money to operate the next year. So as you proceed down that path, I think we need to be very cautious on that, because that will blow up in a heartbeat with regard to how people perceive that and whether they're going to participate.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay brought out a good point. And if the committee prioritizes, where should that savings go? Into the libraries, curriculum, school books, things of that nature? Then you're not really losing anything from the budget. The children are gaining by this suggestion program. And I think that's what you have to really prioritize. We're not looking to cut money out of the budget to use on something else. We want to put that savings to good use. And that will encourage the parents and the students to get involved more.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Martin?
Just one last, and I know that Christine will be investigating this, but, excuse me, I mean, I know for many of the federal contracts that I manage, there are very strict requirements as to what I can and cannot spend funding on. And my concerns are, if we need to ensure that whatever line item perhaps this savings is coming from, it may not have the capacity to be turned around into either a suspense account or any of the other kind of, you know, processes that we're discussing. So just if we could get a sense, I don't know how taxpayer dollars, whether they're coming from the state in Chapter 70, whether they're local funds coming from the city, what the strictures are on those funding sources that we'd need to be very, very aware of before we started moving money around.
Ms. O'Connor?
I agree, and while Jay is correct in terms of procedurally how you would end up doing it, looking at the funding source coming from the budget becomes, you know, it creates a greater number of issues than the committee would face if there was a private funding source out there, be it by grants or other types of things. Also, there is the other issues that you speak of in terms of grant funding and what those monies can be applied to, and you know, and then even on the city side, if there ever was actually a cost savings, it would immediately, by operation, go right back into the general fund, unless the council decided to do a supplemental appropriation or an appropriation transfer or something of that nature. And you know, as far as the savings, which has been discussed, maybe a good example of that is something that was being looked at on the city side, and that had to do with implementation of biweekly payroll, which is something the manager's office has been pursuing and the council has been looking at as well. And that's a good example of a case where there isn't necessarily a clear-cut savings, particularly right up front, but it's just a much better way of having employees in the treasurer's office spend their time or not spend their time preparing a weekly payroll and doing it bi-weekly. But it seems, listening to this, allowing, however this plays out, a great amount of flexibility in terms of what the incentives are and what the measurement sticks are, and it's something also that would need a lot of input, obviously, and ultimate decision-making from the superintendent on the school department side and the manager on the city side for many of the program, of the ideas that are being discussed.
Thank you. If we continue here, the next item would be, and again, we're kind of tight on time at this point, so we're not going to be able to get to all these topics here, all the issues. There's a couple that I would like to take a look at, and that would be, well, let me just back up for a second. The establishment of a time frame for the program. I think that's pretty evident that it's something that we cannot rush at this point. it's going to take quite a while, and I don't think that we can come up with any type of a date or a time at this point. So I think that's something that we can put aside at this moment. I'd like to skip to G for a second. That's something that I'd like to get some clarification, especially from the individuals from the university and from Middlesex, and see if they could help us out with this. Creative ideas that benefit the school district but do not result in cost savings. Dr. Linehan?
But one of the items, just to digress just a moment back up with all the compensation on this, I think as I said when we started, is using public money to give folks rewards is a complicated issue. But I think you can roll this program out without that if it is such that they feel they're invested in the process. These people work in these schools. They like what they do. They wouldn't be there. If they feel they're part of the process and there's a tangible benefit to the place that they go to every single day, and the students somehow see it, the faculty somehow see it, the janitors somehow see it, whatever that may be, I submit to you they're going to participate in the process even if there is no financial reward. But it has to be a genuine process where there's feedback, and you need to get some traction by getting some ideas that actually work and people see that benefit. And it is not a chilling process whereby their budget is slashed the following year. I think all those are key. That is going to get you here. People will participate. I think the ideas will come forward. You know, we like to think, as noted earlier, it's people's jobs. We're all very altruistic, and it should happen this way and it should happen that way. Give them a stake in the process. Give them a stake in the process. Give them a voice. I think it's going to start off very, very slowly. I think you may want to, you know, Jay can look at the budget, and he's going to tell you where there's areas that he'd like to try to save money over others. And, you know, you're going to get people who can identify certain things. This would be an area we want to look at more thoroughly, but I don't know where to start because I'm not on the ground with this day to day. And I think you need to seed it a little bit that way and give people some of these ideas rather than throwing open this, you know, this blank sheet and say, what do you think? Give me your ideas. You need to probe that a little bit and facilitate it a little bit. And if you look at on the things that, you know, management looks at and said, yeah, but I haven't had a good idea on this particular issue for heaven knows how long, seed it that way. You know, start some parent-wide things. Maybe it is the PTO. Maybe it's subcommittee. Somehow you get out there and start to have these discussions, because even if you market it, you put it out, and even if you're putting money out there and you just put it out and wait to see if the fish bite, they're not going to bite, in my opinion. You need to get out there and be active with this. And exactly how you do that, I think you need to give some further thought to. But I think it's going to happen whether you give people financial reward or not, because I think the reward when they go to work every single day, if they can see it, these ideas are going to come forward. And there is going to be skepticism that, you know, we're throwing this out, this is a political thing, no one really cares what we think. That's a huge hurdle. And so I think if you can focus some of the ideas of areas that have much more ripeness than others, and you can get some results in a short term, it'll catch on. I think you'll address this item.
I think that actually goes back to what we were saying earlier, and that is asking the employees what they think. And I think that's extremely important, and it is good, and I think Dr. Pearson mentioned that for morale purposes, because finally they're saying, listen, somebody cares what I'm thinking, and somebody's going to respect my ideas. It might not be accepted, it might not save money, but yet somebody's going to listen. And I think you're absolutely right. That's extremely important, and that goes a long ways, because people, I think, appreciate, they feel like they're appreciated, and I think there's no doubt that that's a morale booster. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, there are two kinds of rewards that people can receive: compensation rewards and non-compensation rewards. if we're talking about a suggestion that produces a tangible cost-saving benefit, that could perhaps be associated with the compensation award. If there's another kind of suggestion that comes forward that does not generate cost savings but improves the functioning of the system of the kind that we were just suggesting, there are other ways to reward that person. Recognition rewards, for example, are very important. You see, if looking at these plaques on the wall here, the person's picture with awarded, recognition, date, suggestion, whatever it might be, know exactly what it might be. But there are other kinds of things that can be done in that respect too, that are non-compensation rewards, but that people find intrinsically valuable because it makes them feel good. And that's very important. But another important piece of this, we were talking about this a little bit earlier under one of the other headings, and that has to do with the time frame between when an individual makes a suggestion and when the individual is given feedback regarding what happened to that suggestion. And this relates, of course, to all the things that we've been talking about tonight, having to do with how many suggestions come in, how many people are there to evaluate, what are the ranges of expertise that people who are doing the evaluating have, so that they will be able to determine whether an idea is a good one or a bad one. If a person makes a suggestion and makes the effort to perform, the performance being to make a suggestion, and finds that that does not yield a result, then that person is not going to be motivated to make suggestions in the future. So there's got to be very high credibility here from the school systems, the city's point of view, in making this thing work, because people understand this. They're not dumb, they're very smart. They see very quickly whether something I said was heard and was responded to as compared to if it was not. So that time frame, the procedure, as this develops, the procedures have to be developed so that we can compress as much as possible how much time it takes from idea receipt to response.
That's a good point, because the time frame, in my mind, I was thinking of the time frame of when we would get the program started, but I understand exactly what you're saying, because once again, you bring an idea forward and you're scratching your head and saying, well, whatever happened to the idea? Is it one of those situations where it's put in the bottom drawer once again and nothing ever happened? So I think you're right. That's extremely important. And again, I think it goes back to what Dr. Linehan said, is the number of ideas coming in. We have to have a process in place. We'd have to have a process in place that could expedite those applications or ideas as quick as possible. Or you're going to lose, you would definitely lose the employees. Right. Or you're going to lose their ideas.
And all of the stakeholders involved have to be involved in this process, and that does not just mean the people who are making suggestions. The people who have to implement those suggestions need to be a part of this process as well, because that buy-in is critical. Resistance to change is rampant in any organization, not because people are lazy or indifferent or incompetent, but they simply perceive, for whatever their good reasons, that doing X will not benefit me or will hurt me. So those people have to be brought into this process and understand that their interests will be looked after if a change is made that affects their work life.
Yes, Ms. Brown?
Sorry, just one other question on this item G, for the ones that do not result in cost savings. I don't know if, as we're having future conversations, we might want to consider incorporating into this kind of the rainmakers, the individuals who are bringing dollars into the district, whether it's through those specific grant writing opportunities that they may have access to. I mean, off the top of my head, I'd say we don't want to include DOE grants, obviously, but that there could be some private grants that do come into the district. We all know that they exist. Would that be something that we'd also be looking at in terms of this, in terms of a reward structure?
And I think also with that last item where it says it does not result in cost savings, this is perhaps where Mr. Cook could come in with the business community, as you mentioned, gift certificates or something on that line there, where it's not actual money coming from the school department, but a reward, should we say, or a bonus, or whatever you want to call it, from the community at large, which I think that's, that becomes very important too, because what happens is you have not just the school department, but you also have the business community weighing in on this and truly becoming a partner here. Do we have any other suggestions or comments? Because I know it's getting late, and what I would like to do is I would like to have anybody that would like to say something before we leave, and I'm not sure whether, did you want to say something? Oh, okay.
It's hard waving in the back corner. I just wanted to confirm, a lot of the ideas about equity are absolutely really very important, the whole equity of purpose. And then again, speaking as a school teacher, and that's the point I wanted to make from back here, we have very creative collaborators on our staff. So the whole process of how everything will be handled is going to be really, really important. And I know we have lots of teachers, because they share ideas with us all the time. So how, in fact, we get the information. So I thought a lot of really great points were made, but the whole process, and also because I know everybody here works extremely hard, how we will be able to, as agencies, put the time in that may be required of an initiative of this nature. And that's always something that's a challenge, because as I know, in the city of Lowell, everybody works 110%, and we always try to go 125, but that is something to take into consideration. If you're going to you have so many employees, and you will get, I believe, many ideas that will come our way, how in fact you will prioritize those in a way. So there's lots of work and lots of discussion that has to continue, but I think that we will get many ideas. People love to be heard. People share ideas with me all the time. And so that's going to have to be a very tight, formal process, and I think we have the talent to be able to get there, but it will take quite a bit of discussion to get to that piece.
Thank you. And just listening to what you said, perhaps, who knows, maybe perhaps you start off with a pilot program. Start off very small, and then eventually grow into something larger. That might be, maybe you take one group and work with one group. Maybe you take a school, or take, I think as Dr. Linehan said, perhaps maybe a level, whether it's K through 4 and work with them, or 5 through 8. I'm not sure. Again, I do not have the answers.
That would be a very wise thing to do, to start out with a smaller experiment and see what the result is, where the consequences of it not working out are not, disastrous to the system. But one other point, particularly when you're talking about non-compensation rewards, it's very important to recognize that what is a reward is very much in the eye of the beholder. One person's reward is another person's punishment, is another person's item of indifference. Therefore, if we're talking about rewards that are not money, it's very important to make sure we understand what the needs and wants are of the potential recipients. And while we can't necessarily ask every individual what he or she would like as a reward, it's important, I think, to have a range of alternatives available to distribute rather than just one or two. So that you'll know that when a person receives it, that will in fact be perceived the way you want it to be perceived.
Thank you, Doctor. I think that this night has been very enlightening. I still think that we can certainly go forward. I'm not exactly sure what this model is going to look like. But I think it can be a project that we can all work on together and make it work, and certainly can help the school system be a better school system than it is right now. And I want to say that I want to thank each and every one of you individuals being here tonight, because again, it's a warm night, and you're taking time out of your day, and you obviously start off early in the morning and work a full day. So I really appreciate each and every one of you coming out. It's extremely important. I would also like to say that this, if we can get this off the ground, it certainly is a strong partnership. It'll be a strong partnership with the school system, the business community, UMass, Middlesex, and nonprofits. It is truly the entire city of Lowell working together for a common goal, and that is to save money and to make the school system perhaps a better place to be for the 14,000 students that we have. So again, I congratulate each and every one of you being here tonight. And before we sign off, I'd just like to say that if anybody would like to weigh in and say something before we finish, I would like to have an ending comment by anyone. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was brought up by many of the panelists. Before you can run, you have to walk. And this is a marathon. It's not a 60-yard dash. And I would suggest you do have a pilot program, probably just the middle schools. Have a draft and see how that would function, how it would work. Or you could start with the high school, whatever. But everything is going to rely, I just want to let you know, on the solicitor with her report. And once that report comes back, I then think then you can probably either plan or we probably can't go forward. It's up to the solicitor to make sure we do it in a legal way. But I think it's a great idea. Any way we can look at ways of saving money for the taxpayer and benefit the school system, then it's a worthy program.
I have confidence in the city solicitor. I'm sure she's going to be able to figure out a way to make this work legally. Any other comments? Yes, Salehi.
Thank you. The only thing I had to add, too, is that I think this is a good idea, and I know, we're all waiting for the solicitor's report, opinion. But I think this idea is a good idea across the board. And I know, I listened to the panelists, and you have to be careful. But there's nothing wrong with the congratulations, you did a nice job. It doesn't have to be monetary all the time. And what stems out of it, what comes out of this too, is just more communication and more participation in each school, each department. And this is where your idea, is going to benefit. I mean, we want this for the kids, we'll do it for ourselves. We just tell our employees, you're doing a great job. You have any good ideas, bring them to me. And that's where this is going to flourish too. So we don't need to concentrate on what we're going to give you for reward. You can just say to people, hey, you're doing a great job.
Well, I think
so. I think we should look at that too, and not to make it sound so simple, but don't forget that too. And I think that's where we need to just remember to say thank you.
Well, it's simple, but it is important. You're right.
Right.
And it's something that we should be doing every
yeah.
day. You're right. Thank you. Any other comments before we adjourn? Yes.
Just one more, Mr. Conway. In talking about pilots, you may want to think about some of the motions that have come before the Lowell School Committee, thinking about recycling, thinking about looking at electricity. Those are things that have come up in our conversation when we were doing budget talks. So, in fact, we may want to say, these are areas where we really would like to look creatively at some problem-solving initiatives. So, in fact, we might want to think thematically, let's look at perhaps recycling and things like that may, in fact, people may have ideas about. So you might want to, while you're piloting, pilot in schools or pilot topically on a particular topic. So just an idea that popped in my head.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
take a look at these photos. Well, I can actually see some of them. What a beautiful, beautiful room. There's so much history here. Yeah.